3 months had passed since humanity surrendered to the galactic hegemony. Everything should have been simple. The aliens had won, humans had lost, and now the galaxy's newest slaves were being put to work. But nothing was going as planned. Captain Lee Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of the Vorthak warship Bloodfang. He wore the gray uniform of a conquered human, but Admiral Krextor treated him more like an advisor than a slave. This confused the other Vorthak officers, but they had learned to trust their admiral's judgment. "The asteroid field ahead looks clear," reported the Vorthak sensor officer. His name was Grix, and his scales were bright red with youth. Lee studied the readings on his own screen. Something felt wrong. The asteroids were positioned too perfectly, too neatly arranged. It reminded him of something he had seen in human military training files years ago. "Admiral," Lee said carefully, "I recommend we take a different path." Krextor turned his massive head toward the human. The Vorthak admiral was old and wise, with silver scars covering his dark scales. "Why? The sensors show nothing dangerous." "Sir, may I ask how long your people have been using these sensor arrays?" 40 years. "They are the best in the galaxy," Lee nodded. "They are very good, but they might not detect everything." "Explain," Krextor demanded. Lee walked to the tactical display. "These asteroids are arranged in a defensive pattern. If I were planning an ambush, I would hide mines in the gaps between them. Your sensors would see the asteroids but miss small objects in their shadows." The bridge crew laughed. Grix hissed with amusement. "Human, you know nothing about our technology. Our sensors can detect a coin floating in space." "Yes, sir," Lee said politely. "But can they detect a coin that does not want to be found?" Krextor studied the display more carefully. He had been fighting wars for 60 years. Something about the human's words made him think. "What would you suggest?" "Send a probe first. A small one following the exact path we plan to take." The admiral considered this. It would delay them by an hour, but it would also keep his ship safe if the human was right. He gave the order. The probe launched and flew toward the asteroid field. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly explosions lit up space like deadly flowers. Hidden mines destroyed the probe and revealed themselves in the process. The bridge fell silent. If they had flown into that field, the Bloodfang would have been badly damaged or destroyed. "How did you know?" Krextor asked quietly. Lee looked embarrassed. "We studied your people for many years before the war. We learned about your sensors and how they work. We also learned about the tactics of your enemies. This kind of trap is something the Zilhari rebels like to use." "You studied us? Before first contact?" "Yes, sir. We found pieces of your technology that had drifted into our space. We reverse-engineered them and learned about your capabilities. We wanted to understand who our neighbors were." Krextor felt a chill run down his spine. "How much did you learn?" "Enough to help you win battles more efficiently," Lee said. "Would you like me to show you some improvements we could make to your ship's design?" Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening on thousands of ships and stations. Dr. Park Hyejin worked in a Nexari research facility on the crystal world of Nexus Prime. The facility was beautiful, with walls made of living crystal that glowed with soft light, but the work was frustrating for the Nexari scientists. "The growth rate is too slow," complained research leader Kexion. His crystal body flashed with irritated yellow patterns. "Our new battle crystals take 6 months to mature. By then the war could be over." Hyejin looked at the growing crystals through her magnifying scope. She had been studying Nexari crystal technology since she arrived. The process was amazing, but she could see ways to make it better. "Sir," she said hesitantly, "what if we change the nutrient mixture?" "Impossible. This formula has been perfected over centuries." "Yes, sir, but I noticed that your crystals grow faster in certain areas of the facility. I think it has to do with the ambient electromagnetic fields." Kexion's body flashed with skeptical orange light. "Electromagnetic fields do not affect crystal growth." "May I show you something?" Hyejin asked. She led him to a corner of the lab where some experimental crystals were growing near a power conduit. These crystals were noticeably larger than the others despite being planted at the same time. "Interesting," Kexion admitted, "but this could be coincidence." Hyejin pulled out a small device. "This is a human electromagnetic field generator. Very simple technology. If I place it near these young crystals..." She activated the device. Within minutes, the crystals began growing visibly faster. Their light became brighter and their structure more complex. Kexion stared in amazement. How did you know this would work? We studied your crystal samples that we found in space debris. We noticed they responded to electromagnetic stimulation. It was in our databases for 20 years before we met you officially. 20 years? The Nexari's crystal body turned pale blue with shock. We have been preparing to meet you for a long time, Hyejin said quietly. On the gas giant world of Ethereal Prime, engineer Kim Jinwoo was having his own revelations. The Ethereals had brought him to fix their quantum consciousness matrix, a device that connected all ethereal minds across space. The matrix was a marvel of technology, but it had been malfunctioning for weeks. Ethereal technicians had tried everything they knew, but the problem remained. Jinwoo studied the quantum field readings while Essence Mordan watched nervously. The ethereal being was responsible for the matrix, and its failure could disconnect millions of its people. The problem is in the harmonic resonance, Jinwoo said after an hour of study. Impossible, Mordan replied, its gaseous form shifting colors rapidly. The harmonics are perfectly calibrated. Yes, sir, but the calibration assumes that all ethereal minds resonate at the same frequency. But they don't, do they? Mordan paused. This was something the ethereals rarely discussed with outsiders. How could you know that? Jinwoo pointed to the readings. The pattern shows micro-variations in the quantum field. Each ethereal mind has a slightly different frequency, like fingerprints. Your matrix tries to force them all to match, but that creates interference. What do you suggest? Instead of forcing harmony, allow for the natural variations. Create a dynamic frequency that adapts to each mind. Jinwoo began adjusting the matrix controls. His movements were confident and precise, as if he had worked with this technology before. Where did you learn about ethereal consciousness? Mordan asked. We intercepted some of your quantum transmissions years ago, Jinwoo admitted. We couldn't understand your language, but we could analyze the quantum patterns. We figured out how your minds work together. You studied our most private communications? We wanted to understand you. All of you. We knew we would meet someday. The matrix hummed back to life, working better than it had in years. Mordan felt the connection to its people strengthen and clarify. Your repair is superior to our original design, Mordan admitted reluctantly. Back on the Hegemony flagship, Supreme Commander Thaxavel was receiving disturbing reports from across his empire. Humans were not just working well as slaves. They were working too well. Sir, reported Intelligence Officer Vegtal, the humans seem to know things they should not know. They understand our technology better than some of our own engineers. They predict our tactics before we implement them. How is this possible? It appears they have been studying us for decades, sir. They know our strengths and weaknesses. They know how we think. Thaxavel remembered Ambassador Minho's words about rule number 1. The most dangerous surrender is the one that looks like exactly what you wanted. Are they planning rebellion? No, sir, that is what makes this so strange. They seem genuinely eager to help us, but their help is making us dependent on them. Thaxavel felt that cold fear again. Dependent how? Our fleet efficiency has improved by 30% since we started using human advisors. Our crystal production is up 40%. Our communication systems work better than ever before. If we remove the humans now, we would be weaker than before we conquered them. Thaxavel finished grimly. Yes, sir. The Supreme Commander stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Minho was living comfortably in the capital city, treated more like a guest than a prisoner. Other human leaders were integrated into every level of hegemony operations. Get me Ambassador Minho, Thaxavel ordered. I want to know what rule number 1 really means. But deep down, he was starting to understand. The humans had not just surrendered. They had surrendered in exactly the way that would make them indispensable. And that, Thaxavel realized, might be the most dangerous kind of victory he had ever seen. Intelligence Director Kethmas floated in the center of the secret meeting room, her crystal body pulsing with urgent red patterns. Around her, the highest leaders of the galactic hegemony waited to hear what she had discovered about the humans. What I am about to tell you will change how we see this war, she began, her voice like distant thunder. The humans did not just lose to us, they planned to lose. Supreme Commander Thaxavel leaned forward in his chair. Explain. 6 months ago, we captured a human data storage facility on Europa, one of their outer colonies. We thought it contained military secrets. Instead, we found something far more disturbing. The crystal being projected images into the air above them. The first image showed human leaders sitting around a table, but the timestamp was from 30 years ago, long before first contact with any alien species. This is Fleet Admiral Shin Wonho and strategic analyst Yoon Seulgi, Kethmas continued. They were planning for a war that had not started yet, against enemies they had never met. The recording began to play. Admiral Wonho was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He pointed to a star map showing the local galaxy. The mathematical probability is clear, his recorded voice said. We will encounter advanced alien civilizations within 50 years. When we do, we will be outmatched. Our only advantage will be time to prepare. Analyst Seulgi, a younger woman with intense eyes, added, every piece of alien technology we have found shows superior engineering. If we fight them with brute force, we will lose quickly. So we don't fight them with force, Admiral Wonho replied. We fight them with understanding. The recording switched to another meeting, this one 20 years old. The humans were examining pieces of what looked like Vorthak armor. We found this debris at the edge of our solar system, Seulgi explained to the group. Based on the design, the aliens who made it are probably reptilian, aggressive, and honor-based. They value strength and direct confrontation. Good, Admiral Wonho said. That means we can predict how they will attack and how they will behave after they win. Another recording, 15 years old, showed humans studying Nexari crystal fragments. These beings think in mathematical patterns, a scientist reported. They value efficiency and logical order. They will want to organize any territory they conquer. Even better, Admiral Wonho smiled. Organized beings need administrators. We can become indispensable administrators. The final recording was from just 5 years ago. Humans were analyzing ethereal quantum signatures. The third species is collective consciousness, Seulgi announced. They share thoughts and experiences. They will be curious about individual minds like ours. Perfect, Admiral Wonho said. Curiosity leads to dependency. We can teach them things they cannot learn from each other. The projections ended. The hegemony leaders sat in stunned silence. Essence Velmoth drifted closer to Kethmas. Are you saying they knew about us for decades? Not new. Prepared. They found traces of our passage through space, debris, energy signatures, quantum echoes. They studied these traces and built psychological profiles of each of our species. Minister Nexara's crystal body flashed with analytical blue light. Show us their military preparations. Kethmas projected new images. These showed human shipyards, but they looked wrong. The ships being built were too simple, too weak. We thought these were their best warships, she explained, but they were deliberately primitive, built to look impressive to us while hiding their real capabilities. Where are their real ships? Thaxvel demanded. Hidden. We have detected at least 300 advanced vessels in deep space, using technology we cannot fully understand. They kept them away from the war on purpose. They wanted to lose, Velmoth whispered, its gaseous form shimmering with amazement. Yes. A quick defeat with minimal casualties followed by immediate surrender. This placed their people in exactly the positions they needed throughout our empire. The revelation was staggering. The humans had orchestrated their own conquest. More evidence came to light over the following days. Captain Zhang Dohyun was working in a Vorthak shipyard when Admiral Krextor asked him about hull reinforcement patterns. Your design is good, Dohyun said politely. But you could improve efficiency by changing the metal composition here and here. He pointed to sections of the ship blueprint. How do you know so much about our metallurgy? Krextor asked. Dohyun looked embarrassed. We have been building ships like yours for 30 years, sir. Yours are adequate. You have ships like ours? Better, actually. But we kept them hidden during the war. It would not have been fair to use them. Krextor stared at the human. Not fair? We wanted to surrender, sir. Using our best ships would have made the war last longer and killed more people on both sides. Similar conversations were happening everywhere. Researcher Ominji was working with ethereal philosophers when she casually mentioned human theories about consciousness. Your collective mind is fascinating, she told Essence Colthan, but it has limitations you have not considered. What limitations? Individual creativity is reduced when minds are too connected. You think efficiently, but you rarely think in new ways. Impossible. Our collective consciousness is perfect, Minji smiled. Perfect for stability, yes. but not for growth. We studied consciousness theory for decades after detecting your quantum signals. Individual minds can imagine things that collective minds cannot. She showed Colthan some human art and music. The ethereal being was amazed by the creative concepts that came from isolated individual minds. You are not as advanced as you think, Minji said gently. You are just advanced in different ways. The comment spread through the ethereal collective consciousness like fire. For the first time in centuries, they began to question their own perfection. Back in the secret meeting room, Intelligence Director Kethmas presented her final findings. The humans have been preparing for this exact scenario for 30 years, she concluded. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and positioned themselves to become indispensable after defeat. But why? Thaxavel asked. What do they gain? Integration without conquest. They become part of our civilization without having to fight for it. They gain access to our technology, our resources, and our knowledge while keeping their own culture intact. It is brilliant, Minister Nexara admitted reluctantly. Mathematically perfect. It is also terrifying, Velmoth added. If they can plan this far ahead, what else are they planning? Kethmas pulsed with nervous orange light. There is one more thing. According to the records we found, this is only the first phase of their plan. First phase? Thaxvel's voice was dangerously quiet. They call it peaceful integration. The second phase is called mutual advancement. The third phase... She paused. The third phase is called galactic cooperation. What does that mean? I do not know. But they seem to believe that we will eventually work together as equals, not as conquerors and conquered. The alien leaders looked at each other. The idea was absurd. The galactic hegemony ruled through strength and fear. They did not cooperate with inferior species. But then they thought about the past 3 months. Human advisors had made their fleet stronger. Human scientists had improved their technology. Human diplomats had solved problems that had puzzled alien minds for years. Are we becoming dependent on them? Thaxavel asked quietly. I believe we already are, Kethmas replied. The Supreme Commander stood up abruptly. Bring me Ambassador Minho now. Sir, what will you do? I am going to ask him about rule number 1, and this time he is going to tell me the truth. But even as he gave the order, Thaxavel suspected he already knew the truth. The humans had not just surrendered to the hegemony, they had joined it. And somehow, without anyone noticing, they were changing it from the inside. The question was whether this change would destroy the hegemony or make it stronger, and Thaxavel was no longer sure which outcome the humans wanted, or which outcome he should fear more. 1 year after the surrender, the galactic hegemony was stronger than it had ever been. Their fleets were more efficient, their technology was more advanced, and their economy was booming. But Supreme Commander Thaxavel could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Economic Advisor Nam Jihoon sat in the central trade hub of Nexus Prime, surrounded by floating crystal displays showing commerce data from across the galaxy. The Nexari had never seen numbers like these before. Trade efficiency is up 400%, announced Trademaster Luxara, her crystal body glowing with amazed golden light. Our profit margins have exceeded all projections, Jihoon smiled politely. The algorithms I designed simply optimize cargo routes and predict market fluctuations. It is basic mathematics. Basic? No Nexari economist has ever achieved these results. Perhaps you were thinking too rigidly, Jihoon suggested. Nexari minds are excellent at logical analysis, but human minds approach problems differently. We see patterns you might miss. Luxara studied the complex equations on her screens. Can you teach other Nexari to use these methods? I have tried, but the mathematical concepts do not translate well. Your minds work in crystal matrix patterns while our algorithms follow organic neural pathways. So only humans can operate these systems? For now, yes. What Luxara did not know was that Jihoon's algorithms were intentionally complex. They worked perfectly, but they were designed so that only humans could understand and maintain them. The Nexari had become completely dependent on human economic advisors without realizing it. Across the galaxy, military consultant Choi Soyeon was revolutionizing Vorthak battle tactics. She stood on the command deck of the flagship Empire's Wrath, watching Admiral Drexnall coordinate a fleet exercise. Formation 7 Alpha, the Admiral commanded. His officers moved to implement the new battle pattern that Soyeon had taught them. The exercise was perfect. The Vorthak ships moved like a single organism, covering each other's weaknesses and maximizing their firepower. Enemy drones were destroyed with minimal losses. Incredible, Drexnell said. We have defeated 3 rebel fleets using these tactics. Our casualties are down 70%. I am glad the formations work well for you, Soyan replied. How did you develop them? Human naval strategy evolved differently than yours. Vorthak tactics emphasize individual ship prowess, but human tactics focus on fleet coordination. Drexnell looked at the tactical display. Can you train our officers to create new formations like these? Soyan hesitated. The theory is complex. It requires understanding 3-dimensional space combat in ways that, forgive me, but Vorthak minds find difficult. What do you mean? Your people think of space battles like ground battles with honor and direct confrontation. Humans think of space as an ocean, with currents and depths and hidden movements. So only humans can design these tactics? Only humans can design them quickly and efficiently. Vorthak officers could learn eventually, but it would take years of study. What Drexnell did not understand was that Soyan had deliberately chosen tactics that played to human strengths while highlighting Vorthak limitations. The new formations worked brilliantly, but they required constant human oversight to adapt and improve. On Ethereal Prime, cultural attaché Yang Kyung-min was transforming alien art in ways no one had expected. He stood in the gallery of collective consciousness watching ethereal beings experience something they had never felt before. This is remarkable, whispered Essence Nalvan, its gaseous form shimmering with new colors. Individual expression within collective harmony. How is this possible? Kyungmin had introduced the ethereals to human concepts of personal creativity. He taught them how individual minds could create beauty that collective consciousness could never imagine. Each mind is unique, he explained. When you force all minds to think alike, you lose the special gifts that come from different perspectives. But individual thought leads to chaos and conflict. It can. But it also leads to breakthrough innovations and artistic beauty that collective minds cannot achieve. The ethereal beings around them were creating art unlike anything in their history. Individual ethereals were learning to think independently, while still maintaining their connection to the collective. Can you teach us to balance individual and collective thought? I am trying, but it is very difficult. Human minds naturally think as individuals first, then learn to work together. Your minds work in reverse. The transition requires careful guidance, so we need human teachers? For this type of development, yes. What Nalvan did not realize was that Kyungmin was creating a fundamental change in ethereal consciousness. They were becoming addicted to individual creativity, but they needed human guidance to explore it safely. Without human teachers, their experiments in individuality could fragment their collective mind entirely. The pattern was the same everywhere. Humans had made themselves indispensable to every aspect of hegemony society. They were helpful, efficient, and brilliant, but they were also irreplaceable. Supreme Commander Thaxavel finally called Ambassador Minho to a private meeting. They met in Thaxavel's personal chambers, away from recording devices and other officials. Sit, Thaxavel said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Minho sat calmly, showing no fear. He had been living comfortably on the hegemony capital world for a year, treated more like an honored guest than a prisoner. I want to know about rule number 1, Thaxavel said bluntly. What would you like to know? What does it really mean? Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, that same small smile he had worn in the surrender chamber. Rule number 1 is very simple, Supreme Commander. Never make slaves of people who are smarter than you are. Are you claiming humans are smarter than us? Not smarter, different. We think in ways you do not. We see solutions you miss. We understand things you do not. And why is this dangerous? Because eventually you will depend on us so much that you will forget who is really in charge. Thaxavel felt that familiar cold fear. You are saying we have become dependent on humans. What do you think? Can your fleets fight effectively without human tactical advisors? Can your economy function without human algorithms? Can your society grow without human innovation? The Supreme Commander knew the answer. The hegemony had become addicted to human expertise in just 1 year. They were stronger than ever, but that strength came from human contributions. You planned this, he said. Of course we did. We planned it for 30 years. Why? What do you gain? Minho leaned forward. What do we gain? We gain partnership instead of slavery. We gain respect instead of conquest. We gain a future where all species work together instead of some ruling over others. The hegemony rules through strength. Yes, and you are stronger with us than without us. But strength without wisdom leads to destruction. Conquest without cooperation leads to rebellion. Thaxavel stood up and began pacing. So what happens now? Do you demand freedom? Do you threaten to leave? Neither. We make you an offer. What offer? True partnership. Equal status in a reformed galactic council. Shared leadership of combined civilizations. An end to the empire model and the beginning of a cooperative model. Impossible. The hegemony does not negotiate with conquered species. Then the hegemony will slowly become a human-run empire with alien figureheads, Minho said calmly. Because that is where this path leads. Every month you become more dependent on us. Every year we become more essential to your civilization. You could not run our empire without us. Could you run it without us? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Thaxavel knew the answer, and it terrified him. What you call conquest, Minho continued, we call integration. What you call victory, we call the first step toward cooperation. Rule number 1 is not about surrender. It is about building trust when you need it most. Trust? Supreme Commander, what do you know about the deep space monitoring stations we have been building? Thaxavel stopped pacing. What monitoring stations? The ones watching the galaxy beyond hegemony space. The ones that have detected something you need to know about. What have you detected? Minho's expression became serious. Another galactic power. One that makes the hegemony look primitive. One that does not negotiate or cooperate.
One that is coming this way. The Supreme Commander felt his world shift beneath him.
How long have you known? We detected the first signs 6 months ago. We estimate 18 months before they reach hegemony borders. Why did you not tell us? Because you still thought of us as slaves instead of allies. But now you have a choice to make. What choice? You can keep pretending you conquered us while we slowly take over your empire from within. Or you can accept us as true partners and face this new threat together. Thaxavel sank back into his chair. Everything was falling apart and coming together at the same time. Rule number 1, he said quietly. Rule number 1, Minho agreed. The most dangerous surrender is the one that becomes exactly what you need. 2 years after the surrender ceremony, Ambassador Kang Minho stood in the same grand hall where he had once worn chains. But everything had changed. He now wore the blue robes of a galactic counselor, and the floating chairs around him held representatives from dozens of worlds. Supreme Commander Thaxavel sat beside him, no longer as his captor but as his partner. The old Vorthak warrior had aged in the past months, the weight of leadership and change showing in his scarred features. The proposal before us is unprecedented, Thaxavel announced to the assembled delegates. Ambassador Minho represents humanity in presenting the Galactic Cooperation Accord. Minho stood and activated the holographic display in the center of the hall. Images of star maps and fleet formations appeared in the air. Honored delegates, he began. What we once called the galactic hegemony must now become something new. The threat approaching our borders requires unity, not domination. The delegates listened carefully. Representatives from every major species were present. Vorthak admirals, Nexari economists, ethereal philosophers, and dozens of species that had once been conquered territories. Director Hong Mik-young stepped forward to present the technical details. She had been working with alien scientists for months to prepare this moment. Our combined monitoring stations have confirmed what we feared, she said. The Void Collective controls 17 galaxy clusters beyond our borders. Their technology is approximately 200 years ahead of our current capabilities. Worried murmurs filled the hall. Even the hegemony's advanced technology seemed primitive compared to what was coming. They do not negotiate, Hong continued. They do not accept surrender. They convert entire civilizations into resource processing units. Every world they touch becomes empty of independent life. Minister Nexara's crystal body flashed with analytical patterns. What chance do we have against such a force? Alone, very little, Minho admitted. The hegemony at its strongest could not defeat them. But we are not alone anymore. The display changed to show new ship designs that combine technology from all the galaxy's species. Human creativity, Vorthak durability, Nexari efficiency, and ethereal consciousness integration had produced vessels unlike anything ever built. These ships exist because we learned to work together, instead of dominating each other, Minho explained. Human innovation guided by Nixari logic, built with Vorthak engineering and coordinated through ethereal collective consciousness. Admiral Park Changmin entered the hall with urgent news. His uniform showed the new combined fleet insignia, symbols from all member species woven together. Counselor Minho, he reported, our deep space sensors have detected the Void Collective's advanced scouts. They have crossed into the Outer Rim territories. A chill fell over the assembly. The threat was no longer theoretical. Essence Velmoth drifted closer to the display. How much time do we have? 18 months before their main fleet arrives, Changmin replied. Maybe less. Thaxavel stood up slowly. Then we must decide today. Do we face this threat as the old hegemony, ruling through fear and strength? Or do we face it as something new? What are you proposing? Asked Governor Trixlan of the Outer Colonies. Full partnership, Minho said. Equal representation for all worlds. Democratic decision-making for major policies. An end to the conquest model and the beginning of voluntary cooperation. Impossible, scoffed General Kexvor, an old Vorthak traditionalist. The hegemony has ruled for centuries through strength. We cannot simply abandon what made us powerful. What made you powerful was unity, Minho replied calmly. When the Vorthak, Nixari, and Ethereals joined together, you became stronger than any single species. Now we must extend that unity to include everyone. But humans were conquered. You are slaves! Captain Ryu Jawan stepped forward. He commanded one of the new hybrid warships, crewed by members of 4 different species working together. General, he said respectfully, who do you think has been designing your new tactics? Who improved your crystal technology? Who solved your consciousness integration problems? Humans, but then are we really slaves? Or are we partners who chose to work with you instead of against you? The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the hall. The humans had never been conquered. They had integrated themselves into hegemony society so completely that the distinction between conqueror and conquered had disappeared. Rule number 1, Thaxavel said quietly. Rule number 1, Minho agreed. Never make slaves of people smarter than you, because eventually you will need them so much that the relationship changes anyway. And what is rule number 2? Asked Minister Nexara. Minho smiled. When you cannot beat them alone, make sure they want to stand with you. The vote was close. Many delegates feared losing their traditional power structures. But the approaching threat made cooperation necessary for survival. In the end, the Galactic Cooperation Accord passed by a narrow margin. The hegemony would become a true alliance of equals, with humanity taking its place as a founding member rather than a conquered species. 3 months later, Captain Ryu Jaehwan stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity's Dawn. Beside him, Vorthak Commander Drexnall coordinated fleet movements while Nixari Tactical Advisor Zixara calculated optimal firing solutions. Ethereal navigation consciousness. Morveth guided the ship through hyperspace with precision no single species could achieve. Void Collective scouts detected at coordinate 779, reported the sensor officer, a young Zilhari who had joined the alliance after witnessing the new cooperation model. All ships, prepare for engagement, Jaehwan ordered. Remember, we are not just defending our territories. We are proving that cooperation is stronger than conversion. The battle was brief but decisive. The new alliance ships moved with perfect coordination, each species contributing their strengths while covering others' weaknesses. The Void Collective scouts were overwhelmed by tactics they had never encountered. Enemy vessels destroyed, Drexenol reported. No damage to our ships? Good, Jaehwan said. But this was just the beginning. The real test comes when their main fleet arrives. Back on the capital world, Minho watched the battle reports with Thaxavel in the new council chambers. The room was designed with input from all species, creating a space where every type of being could participate comfortably. The scouts were easily defeated, Thaxavel noted, but intelligence suggests their main ships are far more advanced. Yes, Minho agreed, but we have something they do not expect. What? Diversity. The Void Collective converts everything into the same pattern, the same thinking, the same approach. They have never faced an enemy that thinks in completely different ways simultaneously. You believe our differences are our strength? I know they are. Human creativity, Vorthak courage, Nexari logic, ethereal unity. Together we can imagine solutions that no single species could conceive. 6 months later, The Void Collective main fleet arrived at the Alliance borders. They came with massive ships and overwhelming numbers, expecting easy victory over another divided galaxy. Instead, they found something unprecedented. Hundreds of different species working together by choice, not conquest. They faced tactics that combined the best ideas from dozens of different military traditions. They encountered technology that merged incompatible systems into something greater than the sum of its parts. The war lasted 3 years, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Void Collective had conquered many galaxies, but they had never faced a true alliance. They had converted unified civilizations, but they could not convert cooperation itself. When the final Void ship surrendered, the galaxy celebrated not just victory, but the birth of something new. The Galactic Cooperation Council had proven that different species could work together as equals, creating strength through diversity rather than uniformity. Minho stood once again in the Great Hall, but now it was filled with representatives from 300 worlds. The surrender ceremony had become a founding ceremony, marking the beginning of a new age of galactic civilization. Rule number 1 taught us that the strongest surrender is the one that becomes partnership, he said to the assembly. Rule number 2 taught us that cooperation creates strength that conquest never can. And what is rule number 3? Asked Thaxavel, who had become his closest friend and ally. Minho looked out at the diverse assembly of beings who had chosen to work together rather than dominate each other. Rule number 3 is simple, he said. The galaxy is big enough for everyone if we are smart enough to share it. The applause that followed came from hundreds of different species, each expressing joy in their own way. But the sound they made together was universal, the sound of hope for a better future. And in the end, that was what rule number 1 had really been about. Not victory or defeat, not conquest or surrender, but the simple idea that former enemies could become friends if they were given the chance to choose cooperation over conflict. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone agreed, was exactly as it should be. Captain Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the main window. It was his first time this far from Earth. The ship was humanity's first real starship, built with the new, faster-than-light drive that scientists had worked on for 20 years. Hyunwoo felt proud to command this mission to explore the outer edges of known space. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. His crew of 30 worked at their stations, checking systems and scanning for new planets. They had been traveling for 3 months now, visiting empty star systems and taking notes about everything they found. So far, they had not met any other intelligent life. Hyunwoo was reading reports when his communications officer, Lieutenant Soo-min Kim, looked up from her station with a worried face. "Captain, we are getting a transmission," she said. "It is not from Earth. The signal is very strong and coming from multiple directions at once." Hyunwoo walked over to her station. "What kind of transmission?" "It looks like a communication system far more advanced than ours," Soo-min replied. "The signal is being broadcast across this entire region of space. Should I put it on the main screen?" Hyunwoo nodded. "Yes, let everyone hear it." The main screen flickered and then showed the image of a creature unlike anything humans had ever seen. It looked like it was made of living crystal, with sharp edges and surfaces that reflected light in strange ways. Its voice was cold and mechanical when it spoke. "Attention, primitive species designated human," the crystal being said. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Dominion Council. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel and must now follow Galactic Law 1247. The bridge crew stopped working and stared at the screen. This was humanity's first contact with alien life, and it was not going the way anyone had hoped. Veltar continued speaking without emotion. "According to Galactic Law, all new species must pay tribute to the Dominion Council. You will provide 60% of your planet's resources every year. This includes metals, energy sources, food, and 10% of your population to serve as workers in Council territories." Hyunwoo felt his blood run cold. They were demanding more than half of everything Earth had, plus taking people as slaves. "You have 7 solar cycles to prepare your first tribute payment," Veltar said. "Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your home planet. Do not think you can resist. We have eliminated 847 species that refuse to follow galactic law. Their worlds are now empty space. The crystal being's image showed scenes of planets being destroyed. Huge ships fired weapons that tore worlds apart like paper. Entire star systems vanished in bright flashes of light. The message was clear: obey or die. Send your tribute manifest to these coordinates within 7 cycles, Veltar finished. The council has spoken. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. Some looked scared, others angry. All of them waited for him to speak. Sumin, send a priority message to Earth immediately, Hyunwoo said. Tell them what we just heard. Include the full recording. Yes, sir, Sumin replied, her fingers moving quickly over her controls. Back on Earth, President Ji-Hai Kim was in a meeting when the message arrived. Her assistant rushed into the room with a tablet, his face pale. Madam President, we have an urgent transmission from the New Soul, he said. Ji-Hai read the message and immediately called for an emergency session. Within 2 hours, the most important people in Earth's government gathered in the secure meeting room deep under the Capitol building. Admiral Dong-Min Lee, head of Earth's Space Forces, sat across from Chief Scientist So-Young Choi. General Tae Kyung Lim represented the ground forces, while Ambassador Jin Woo Kang handled diplomatic affairs. They all watched the alien transmission with growing concern. How many ships do they have? Admiral Lee asked after the recording ended. According to the data our sensors picked up, we detected at least 50,000 large ships in this region alone. So-Young replied. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Can we fight them? President Kim asked. Admiral Lee shook his head. Not with what we have now. Our entire space fleet has 12 ships. They have weapons that can destroy planets. Ambassador Kang leaned forward. Perhaps we can negotiate. Many civilizations throughout history have paid tribute to stronger powers. 60% of everything we have, General Lim said angrily. Plus 10% of our people as slaves? That is not tribute, that is surrender. So-Young pulled up data on her tablet. If we give them what they want, Earth will not be able to feed its population within 5 years. Millions will die from starvation and lack of resources. President Kim stood up and walked to the window. Outside, people lived their normal lives not knowing that aliens had just demanded humanity's surrender. What do other species do when they get this demand? She asked. According to the transmission, 847 species have been destroyed for refusing, Ambassador Kang said. That suggests many others have agreed to pay. Or it means 847 species chose to die free rather than live as slaves, General Lim replied. The room fell quiet as everyone thought about the choice facing humanity. Give up most of their world and become servants to aliens or fight a war they could not win. President Kim turned back to the group. I want options. How long do we have? 7 solar cycles. That is about 10 Earth days, So-Young said. Can we build more ships in that time? Admiral Lee asked. No. It takes months to build one ship with our current technology. What about weapons? Can we make anything that might hurt their ships? So-Young thought for a moment. Maybe. We have been working on some new technologies, but it would take time to test and build them. President Kim made a decision. Start working on weapons immediately. I want to know what options we have. Admiral Lee, prepare our fleet for combat. General Lim, start making plans to defend Earth. Are we really going to fight them? Ambassador Kang asked. President Kim looked at him seriously. I need to talk to Captain Park first. He is our representative out there. He needs to respond to their demand. A few hours later, President Kim was on a secure video call with Captain Hyunwoo Park aboard the New Soul. The transmission delay made conversation slow, but they could talk. Captain, you have heard our discussion. The Council wants an answer in 7 days, President Kim said. Hyunwoo nodded. Yes, Madam President. What should I tell them? That decision affects all of humanity. What do you think we should do? Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his family back on Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea this was happening. He thought about the aliens who demanded humanity bow down or die. Madam President, My grandfather fought in the war 60 years ago, he finally said. He always told me that some things are more important than being safe. Freedom is one of those things. President Kim smiled slightly. I was hoping you would say that. Captain, you have permission to respond to the aliens however you think is right. You speak for all of humanity. The call ended and Hyun-woo stood alone on his bridge, looking out at the stars. In a few days, he would have to give humanity's answer to the most powerful force in the galaxy. The answer that would decide whether humans lived free or died fighting. He already knew what he was going to say.